Our next presenter is Stefan De Koning. He's the senior associate from MVRDV. And his presentation is titled Reconstructing the City in the 21st Century, Iconic Architecture and Existing Urban Fabric.
Thank you. Test? Yes, it works. Good. No, this is wrong. Yeah. Does it open? Thank you for being here, for a very warm welcome. I have been asked to talk about iconic architecture and existing urban fabric. I think we're moving a little bit away now from historical buildings and modernism. And I'm just going to show you what our office is doing today within an existing context. We are MVRDV, and it's you don't have to try to pronounce the name, but just that you know, we are it's founded by Maas van Rijs de Vries, and they are the initials of the surnames. But nowadays we are with a team of 11 people trying to manage a very mixed environment of 180 employees and many nationalities. We're working globally, that's why, and my personal geographic zone is this axis between Amsterdam and Sydney, as I try to explain it. And of course Turkey is on the way, and since I've never been in Izmir before, I was just questioning what does it mean if I show you some iconic projects that we're doing in this region. So maybe I'm quite sure you've heard about our office, but just to recap, in the 90s we built the VPRO building, which is the first important building for the office, I think. And what was very special, it was an open office floor plan, which was very groundbreaking, you could say, at that time. Besides, there was the Hanover Pavilion in 2000, where we kind of assembled a vertical organization of Dutch landscape. This, one could say, became an icon within an expo context. Actually today we're doing the transformation of it. I've seen so many transformation projects this morning that I regret I'm not showing you what we're doing there right now. More recent is the Market Hall, of course, another, one could say, iconic building. I'm not sure, I'm going to ask you later or tell something later about what is an icon actually. But this is the existing location where there is used to be a bi-weekly market. Now there's a permanent market inside the building, covered by 200 residences in the city center of Rotterdam. But I'm not going to talk about our, let's say, famous iconic projects, and I just want to tell you a little bit more about how we work and in very special circumstances. So we're working in close collaboration with the Y Factory, of course. The front row knows this. We inspire each other, and after yesterday, I don't know if you were all here, but there was a bit of a discussion about to which style do you belong. Well, I've been told we belong to the super Dutch, but it's up to others to decide and not to me. So icons. Before I came here to Izmir, I thought I had no idea, and I'm not going to tell you what your city is about because you know much better. But of course, we have this. If I Google icon in Izmir, I get your tower mentioned at Konok place. So. And then I looked at an aerial picture which was very familiar for me in what's happening in urban growth in Southeast Asia mainly, starting maybe in Turkey. And I was wondering, it's just a matter of time before new icons will arise and city planning can become iconic to your city. So referring to Dudok, the initial reason why I'm here, for me, I visited the town hall when I was 16, and what makes it iconic to me is that it's so strong in my memory, and it kind of has an expressive massing, you could say, in its architecture in a vertical and horizontal way. But also when you zoom in, you see the attention to material and detail. And I know Dudok was very involved in the production of these construction elements. So maybe that's what makes a good iconic building. Of course, we all know, we think about icons, we think about Paris, we think about the Eiffel Tower, but at the same time the urban fabric is actually part of the icon, you could say. Haussmann created this aerial morphology, you could say, infrastructure, and the Eiffel Tower is just part of that. So Sarkozy came to us, the former president, once to think about the expansion of Paris and what could that mean with 1 billion square meter of extension. Well, that's a large question, but it's maybe very relevant in your own context here. So can we think about competing with the Eiffel Tower in an iconic gesture, so another super Sorbonne? Or do we embrace the urban parks, which well, one of the previous presentations showed it's kind of lacking in Izmir, but in Paris it's largely spread with many forest and park, so which maintains kind of the existing urban fabric. Or do we embrace Haussmann and we just top up the buildings and not interfering at all with the urban fabric? So these were just a couple of suggestions, and then I thought further, like what are other iconic buildings? And of course you have the Opera House in Sydney, or in Amsterdam we're trying to become iconic with this film museum and the former Adam Tower. But actually Amsterdam, the urban fabric, as you showed before, I think it was you, Meindert, is an icon on itself. So iconity is or we make icons, you know, we create icons. Amsterdam is marketing I Amsterdam, so you could definitely question what the icon means. And in that context we're now talking to the municipality of Amsterdam to create another icon, which is a high-rise with the kind of symbol of the city. It's very bold. I'm not going to explain you why it is about this project, but it's in the context interesting to see if this will ever become the build icon of Amsterdam. Rotterdam we know for the Erasmus Bridge, many other things, but I think when you see this bridge you think about Rotterdam, and if you see London you think about the Tower Bridge. So in that relation, iconic structures could also be our Seoul project in Seoul. It's a former industrial infrastructural network, roadway, crossing over many parts of the city, which is being transformed, at the moment, to a pedestrianized zones, which creates complete different connectivity in the city and is transforming the urban fabric in a way. And destinations. So perhaps that's what makes this project iconic. I have to tell you why maybe we are making icons, and I think it goes back quite a while, where we did some research about what is happening to Earth in a way. So if you look at the two arrows, what's going up is the population growth, but what is going down is our resources, of course. So we are all aware of that. So in that sense, that is a trigger to work with densification. If we have the Earth and we all would live like an USA citizen, today we would already need 4.5 Earths almost. So that's part of a question mark for us to, first of all, do research within densification and icons, and secondly do projects that are based on it. So we ask ourselves these bold questions like, what do we need to live actually on Earth, and how can that influence in the future perhaps a datascape of the built environment, and does the need for resources create our landscape or our datascape? And a more practically related to this is maybe the library issue in Holland, where there are so many scattered libraries over villages, and books are not being read that frequently anymore, and there, let's say, there are copies of books everywhere, which is in a way an inefficient way of having them. For the province of Brabant, we once did a proposal to collect all the books and make a Brabant library, creating in a way an iconic building. This is research, this is not a project. Sometimes renders are a bit confusing. Similar to the pig city, one of these big questions for the Netherlands we're dealing with, we have more pigs than people, and they're all being stuck in farms, living in 1 square meter environments. So we did a research, what if we have the inhabited pig city, which actually offers the living environment for this animal with 5 times as large as in the existing urban farms. However, yeah, well, that's it. One of these projects that are also, I think, about icons in an urban fabric could be the Olympic Games. It has been 100 years ago since the Olympic Games were in Holland, and we were asked to envision what that could be. Olympic villages are very often very desolated, deteriorated places, or very difficult to hold up and make it a livable place. So we thought about, can we integrate this in the cities as itself? It needs maybe an iconic high dense building, or can it be really integrated, embedded in the inner city? Related to this rapid growth that I think really causes, let's say, is for architects working nowadays are confronted with large questions, large buildings, and clients ask you, can you make an iconic building for me? At the same time, the money is made in these kind of developments all over Asia, which was a trigger for us to deal with its program, its questions, and to see how can we in a large scale diversify and mix and test what these kind of programmatic uses can become. This is just a study, but in a more finer grain, one could say when you look at an urban fabric and on a smaller scale, an icon is maybe in one household, and it can be a collection of buildings. So this installation of the vertical village in Taipei is kind of a suggestion on how we can deal with densities. Do we really need to stand? Do we really need high rises, or can we just densify in another way? So therefore I show you one project which is actually, I think, the iconic village. And of course we all know in China villages are vasted away, and you have now and then a stubborn person stuck there, but you could really question if the city districts are very livable. So one of our projects is the Bund in Shanghai. It's a very well-known location, and it basically is situated between the upcoming CBD on one side of the river and the village life on the other side, and the site is exactly in the center. When we look, our approach was, can those two marry actually? So can we extend the village? Well, it doesn't give you the amount of density that is needed. But in a way, why can't you densify the village, and maybe extrude, level it up, where there is of course a limit for daylight restrictions. So we might have to split and have a double village. So here we have a kind of marriage between the high-rise as we know it and the city, the urban fabric on the other side. And of course this gives a spectacular view. This was a real project. It was not a research project, but it became a research project because it was never built for many reasons. But imagine city life like this. So I go to another location in Jakarta. Jakarta is a city which is also rapidly expanding in many directions, and it has over 15 million people. So within this, within Jakarta, we looked at what does Jakarta consist of. It consists of different neighborhoods, kampungs, as they call it. And so there is a fish kampung, which is with its own microeconomy. Basically, it's a carpet, a tapestry of microeconomies. So, in the context here, this is in the location of them. But in the context of Jakarta, there's also this redevelopment of the city with high-rises, etc. And that's what redevelopment is at the moment. It's replacing the urban fabric with its microeconomy. Here you see how they collide. So we did 3 projects. I'm gonna ask you how much time I have still. Enough? Okay. One is a vertical village, so city. So I was thinking, did we ever make an Eiffel Tower-like project? Did we ever propose it within the urban fabric, an existing urban fabric? So this is one of the proposals we're working on right now, which is a 450-meter high tower, collection of towers. And I'll tell you why it is maybe justified to do this. So the former money printing company of Indonesia was based on this site, and it's kind of secluded by large main accesses of Jakarta. And when we looked at the site, actually there was no monumental value, only the headquarters of the of the money printing company. And as you can see, by a regulation, actually, we already had to make an offset, so we would create a larger green zone. And in the surroundings, there are multiple. There's a police station. There are multiple governmental buildings. So that's kind of the context we had to work in. It almost so it's so secluded, this place. If you can see here, the junctions from all sides. That we said, okay, do we not have to make kind of a city on itself? It can be a destination, of course. There will be a link to the metro station, but as a site, as a location within the city, it can be almost a circular project. So there's the retail, of course, and it's a fine grain, and there's entertainment, and as it builds up, the housing, the residential, it's mixed used. And the offices, we have a configuration of volumes of 5 different uses mixed together. And actually the size of these volumes are kind of based on the direct environment, which is not, unfortunately not shown here. But what do we create? We create almost a microclimate. So with this shadow casting and the wind flow, there's the possibility to have public space in the center of this building, which I will show you here, on ground floor. It's a very permeable building. What makes it a livable public realm. And of course, we landscape the site. And when you look at the roof plan, this climate fortunately allows on higher altitudes, as we know in Singapore very well, to have roof gardens. This is, I have to say, it's a vision. It's a first start of the project. We'll see where the budget brings us, but this is some impressions. A tilted element, which is the cinema. But of course, this is in the first attempt of a slightly finer grain of large-scale development. This would be open to air, the central plaza, and when you look up, you see how covered and shaded it is. And it's a cinema complex higher up, and with a diversity of housing typologies. And from the hotel, one could look down. So this is maybe the kind of a radical proposal within an existing urban fabric. So I would like to compare it a little bit with our second project, which is the Kamang, which is the vanishing village. It's somehow more refined, and I'll show you what was the was the trigger. So we were actually in a kampong, in the middle of a kampong in Kemang, and it's a very lively neighborhood. It's very much appreciated by locals but also expats, and it has a huge variety of destinations, as you can see here. So with this very small footprint, it was noticed that the existing structures have hardly any value, but what is beautiful about it is the lively outdoor spaces and the interaction with the public realm. So this is something we really wanted to maintain. So how can we do that if we are confronted with a huge FSI to develop another mall, another tower project? So the first attempt is to see what are we dealing with in this urban fabric, in this context, and how can we maybe assign the program, the brief to the project. So we looked at the blue as residences, the red as more hotels and retail and food and beverage. And can this be a collection that we use in a more dense way? So what you see is the tilted volumes, they are cinemas, and the loose elements are more food and beverage and retail. And they create in-between space, shaded space, covered, protected from rain. And one could imagine an interaction between inside and outside. And then the tower itself, it starts with individual housing, individual living, and slowly vanishing to the top. And to top it off, there's a hotel function. And some exception for public uses. So overall, this is another mixed-use development embedded in the urban fabric. And here the section very well shows, I think, or the elevation, I must say. So to show you here this is the roof plan. I intended to show you the ground floor plan. I go one slide further. So in the ground floor, you can see what that means. That oh, sorry, where's the pointer? So the in-between space between volumes is a landscape, basically, with water features and terraces, etc. So what we kind of create is another neighborhood district at grade level already, with actually commercial functions in the back, because it's the main street, and the same is on the other side. And the tower on this side lands as it is. And on higher levels, you can see the same happening. So you walk from inside to outside to inside to outside. So it's kind of an experience within a city, and you're not staying within a building like in any mall as we know it. And on the roof, we have some urban farming. Of course, the climate in Jakarta is so humid and fertile that anything will grow. And this is how your main point of arrival. On the left, the tower. And for example, here there's a cinema landing which gives you access. And this is this in-between space which can become very lively. This is outdoor. Moving up to the roof and looking at the vanishing village, as we say. So this is one of the floor plans. Maybe what you can see is what is I guess so beautiful about this kind of fine grain of pockets and cantilevers is that you create not only terraces, but you create corner views, cross ventilation. As you can see, these are very small apartments, more or less about between 30 and 50 square meters each, and a heavy core, a mixed-use core, and some public outdoor decks. But I guess the nice thing is living in this tower is that you have an outdoor terrace, and when you walk outside and you look back into your apartment and the building, you're taking part of outdoor life. Then there is the hotel, which is much more straightforward. At these altitudes, it's not very nice to live outside. Okay, and now I have 2 more minutes. Then I want to shift to one project. I knew from the beginning I had way too many slides. But I'd like to link to a project, because my key question is, what is an icon? And can it be a small building? So I want to bring you back to Amsterdam, away from large developments, and dealing with the speaking about dealing with the existing urban fabric. This is the Peese Hoofdstraat, one of the most expensive streets in the Netherlands, shopping streets, and it's surrounded by the museum, the Rijksmuseum, as you showed before, of course, and it's a main connection to our park on the left corner. And I really quickly do this. So here you have a collection of icons, historical icons, new icons, but this is a historical picture of that shopping street. And as you can see, it is slowly transforming from kind of a more residential neighborhood into canopies and kind of new facades. But what we have to do in Holland, we have to deal with beauty commissions that decide if we can, in the historical context, build new and modern architecture, or if we have to kind of, what are the guidelines? So here you see another demolished, I would say, facade. So this is our site, this is our location, and I like to compare it with Tokyo, where it said many, in the Omotesando street, you have Todd's building and you're free to do whatever, and you have to make this anchor store, and kind of the user is the, expresses itself via, via the architecture. So we were looking back at some drawings. What is the original house that stood there? Actually very little is remained from it, and many approved proposals have, by the Beauty Commission we found in the archive, this one or that one, and basically it's all about lining up with the floor heights and the window sizes and the use of material. So what do we want to do? That was the question in this context. We are not historical historical architects or postmodernists or whatsoever. So we thought, why don't we make a window to the park, and glassify this whole facade? Why don't we just accept it has to be, we just follow the historical guidelines? So can we achieve this window to the park, since the park is public, the street is public, by glassify the original house that used to be there? It's not rebuilding the real, but an interpretation of the past. So this is the house, and we had to, of course, extend it a little bit, tweak it a bit to the new building regulations, and then we envisioned, like, what about a glass roof, and everything from glass. By night it would shine and glow. Isn't it a anchor store for who's going to be? But we talked to the Beauty Commission, and they said, no, you have to use brick, a certain percentage, but this is what we like you to do. So we thought, what is our role now? I mean, what can we do with this? This is not in line with our vision. So we negotiated 50%, 50-50%, and that was the initiator for our building. So a small gradient we inserted, and this is the outcome. It's a compromise. So why I was referring to Dudok, he was so involved in making his in his building materials, and we actually had to make our own building materials. So we went to Burano and do tests on glass with the Technical University, of course, in Delft. We tested it. We created our own bricks. We have a new way of gluing them. You cannot just use cement. And you use, you know it from the dentist. That's how you get your filling in your tooth. That's the way of gluing this facade together. So I quickly wanted to show you this, where maybe the icon is in the detail. And these are the construction pictures. So I have to really stop now. Yeah. Okay, thank you.